So, when you were a child, did your parents teach you not to take candy from strangers or to get into the cars of strangers? Well, that's wonderful, except that that didn't stop at childhood. The treats, the inducements for us to do things we don't want to do, just got more sophisticated the older that we got. So, welcome everybody. This is an episode entitled What Our Parents Never Taught Us About Manipulation. And I'm Dr. Lucille. I'm a holistically and spiritually oriented psychiatrist and psychotherapist. And my mission with this YouTube channel entitled Dr. Lucille on Relationships is to help people both individually and collectively heal from all of the relationship wounding that we've undergone over the past 5 years, if not longer, so that we can all come together and really create the life that and the world that we truly desire, and maybe even experience unconditional love. So, in my last episode, I talked about lies and secrets. Lies and secrets have everything to do with manipulation. So, manipulation is something that we have to be very cognizant of, really vigilant, although not in an anxious way, but we need to understand how we are manipulated, how we continue to be manipulated, so that we don't fall into those traps and destroy our lives. And so, one thing that is really important to note is that the place that we've come to in our world now could not have happened without tremendous amounts of manipulation of us as a collective. So, whether it's the manipulations that happened to get us to take that certain medical intervention, whether it's manipulations to get us to vote for a certain political party, or even on an individual level, if it's a manipulation to get us to get involved with somebody that's not in our best interests, we need to be empowered by knowing what we're getting into and avoiding it. So, what is it, a manipulation? A manipulation can be a series of tactics that are used to control us, coerce us, deceive us for the benefit of the manipulator. And there are many different types of manipulations. And what I'd like to do is just go over some of the more common ones so that it cues our brains to think about our experiences of having been manipulated, or let's be honest, sometimes how we've manipulated others, because our world is rampant with manipulation, so that we avoid getting caught in these traps. So, one of the most common forms of manipulation that everybody has been talking about for quite some time is gaslighting. Gaslighting is really where the manipulator is undermining our perceptions, our direct experience of our own reality, throwing everything into doubt. One example, during our past election here in Canada, there was a celebrity who was very much promoting a certain candidate for prime minister. And in her social media post one day, she stated that for those people who do not trust her beloved candidate, those people are at risk of being depressed and lonely, because the depressed and the lonely are those who mistrust. Isn't that interesting? So, in other words, if you don't happen to like political candidates' policies or their behavior, you've got a mental illness. So, that's a very common form. During our interesting last 5 years, we were, those of us who did not want to take the medical intervention were gaslit up, down, and sideways as being grandma killers and as, being unempathic to our community, uh, being those who would actively harm others. Now, bear in mind that we need to understand when this is happening to us so that we can trigger our own critical thinking, and we can start really understanding what the dynamic is, questioning exactly what's going on so we do not swallow the gaslighting. And another form of gaslighting, or sorry, manipulation, is something that a lot of people experience in their personal lives, which is love bombing. A typical example of love bombing is when, for example, a single mom with 3 kids who is completely overwhelmed with everything she has to do in the course of the day and is really stressed and overburdened and exhausted, starts dating a man who gives her everything she desires: love, affection, attention, gifts, services. He's the guy who shows up at her front door and offers to take the kids to their sports events. He's the guy who, when she comes home, he's got dinner ready and waiting for her. And on it goes. And the woman may be thinking, wow, this is almost too good to be true. But she laps it up. She loves it because she's been longing for someone to take care of her and take the burden off of her and appreciate her and love her. The problem with this is that the love bomber then turns into a controlling fanatic, and the woman then feels caught and trapped. Now, other forms of manipulation are things like guilt tripping. I think we've all been guilt tripped, and I don't mean to single out moms, but we've all been guilt tripped by moms. Oh, you haven't called me in a few weeks. How can you treat me this way after all I've done for you? Anyway, enough said about that. Then there are things like the emotional blackmail. The boyfriend who knows that you're about to leave him, or it could be a girlfriend. It happens, either gender can do this. They sense that their partner is about to leave them, and they start threatening to commit suicide. This is a particularly pernicious, very damaging form of manipulation that I've had to help a lot of clients with, because then they start feeling like they are responsible for the very life of their partner and that they are totally trapped in this relationship. Now, in this kind of manipulation, the important thing to realize is that you have absolutely no responsibility or control over whether or not another person actually takes their life. And I've been in hospital settings where I've been working, and we've had patients commit suicide on the wards, even with all the staff around them, even with all of our expertise. You, as a layperson, if you're in that kind of situation, you have absolutely no expertise and no responsibility for what another person does with their life. And you have to be very, very clear about that. So you have to then go to the appropriate authorities to get help for this other person. It might mean that you have to contact their family physician, or you have to contact the police to go to their door and, and inform them that this person has expressed suicidal intent. And then they're taken to a facility where they can be assessed. But you do not have to in any way consider that you are responsible and that you have to stay in the relationship. And again, this was something that was also perpetrated on those people during those last 5 years who did not want to take the medical intervention. Killers. They're called killers. And some people actually believed that. And in some cases, it caused people to actually take what they didn't want to take. So this is something that we have to be very, very cognizant of and very much aware of how damaging it is. Another very important manipulation that we all have to be aware of is the silent treatment. And I had a parent who would pull this one a lot. If I expressed any kind of opinion that that parent did not like and felt threatened by, I could get the silent treatment for months. And at first it made me scramble and get desperate and try anything I could to, get back into their good graces and to have them talk to me. And then after a while I realized, no, if they want to manipulate, I'm not going to play the game. And that's exactly what should be done in these situations. Don't play the game. And no matter how much it hurts, it's important to hold firm, because eventually the manipulator will stop and they'll realize that the tactics don't work. Another, form of manipulation that, again, was very much part of our societal norm over the last 5 years is the smearing of reputation. People who stood up and disagreed with the mainstream narrative had smear campaigns up, down, and sideways. They were, called disinformation or people who spread disinformation. A lot of people lost their jobs, medical licenses, and it's a particularly pernicious and deadly form of manipulation. So whenever you see anybody being smeared in the media, somebody who's come out against the popular narrative, you might want to ask, well, is it true that they've really done something wrong, or they just flew in the face of the, shall we call it, ruling elite? And then there's cyber abuse, another major issue that we have to really contend with. And it's particularly horrendous when it happens to children. There have been suicides of children who've been publicly humiliated and shamed by having compromising photos spread about them on social media. it destroys people's lives. And again, we have to be very, very careful about teaching children, especially, how to navigate social media in a way that doesn't entrap them. Now, grooming is also a part of this whole manipulation strategy. Grooming, we understand it mostly to involve children. A sexual perpetrator, a sexual abuse perpetrator, will gain the trust of a child, either in person or online, and make them feel really, really special and entice them into a sexual relationship. And we understand how easily that can happen. Children are very easily manipulated. But it also happens to adults. For example, adult women, who, maybe they have a coworker or a friend or a boss who starts confiding in them, telling them a bit about their personal lives, talking to them about how that woman, that person is that they're talking to is so special and so understands them, and they're so easy to talk to, and they don't have that kind of relationship with their own loved ones. And they make their victims feel so special that eventually they do agree to get involved sexually. And that can be a tremendous detriment to adults who get caught up in this as well. So, and there are so many other forms of manipulation. I invite you to think about what you've seen in your own life, what you've experienced, so that you have a more sophisticated awareness of how it can play out in your life if you're not aware. So, how does this work? Why do people get caught up in these manipulations? Well, in the case of children, I think we can all understand it's fairly easy because they're just not aware. And if they don't have parents who are actively involved, guiding them, teaching them, are not really there for them, then it's very easy for children to fall prey to being manipulated by other adults or other children. In the case of adults who fall prey to manipulations, well, again, part of it is they're not aware. They've never run into this before, or they come from a family where manipulation happens all the time and they don't really recognize it as being anything different or all that harmful because they've lived it, right? And another reason adults get caught in this is that they come from childhoods where they were either abused or neglected or both, and they've grown up feeling very needy, craving attention. So they're easy prey for seasoned manipulators. So anyway, I wanted to leave you with that. I hope that it has been helpful for you. I would really appreciate it if you have any opinions on the matter. If you want to share some of your own ideas about this, please leave a comment and share and like and subscribe. That would be wonderful. And if you feel the need to correct me on anything that I've said or disagree, I welcome that. Thank you very much. So, thank you for sitting through this entire episode, and I will see you in the next one.